I want to get to. Before I do, just real quick mention, did you guys cover on Breaking Points the SEYMOUR HERSH
Yes.
thing? So correct me if I'm wrong, but the findings were that like it was the U.S. who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, right?
That is what his report says. Now, caveats, single anonymous source. Okay. And I've seen some people who know a lot more about the way the military works and the chain of command and whatever that were calling into question certain pieces. However, the motive for the U.S. to blow up the Nord Stream pipelines always made way more sense than the motive for Russia to blow up their own infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of skepticism online, and I'm kind of baffled by it because I don't understand. It's like obviously it was. I don't buy the Russia's blowing up their own colossally profitable pipeline. I think that's silly and goofy.
Yes.
So it's got to be. I thought honestly Ukraine. But then you told me they don't really have the technological capability to pull something like that off. And so then I thought, well, who else is on that, this side of the war?
Right.
And then you think U.S., you floated UK maybe.
Right.
So I don't know why there's so much skepticism, to be honest.
Well, I mean, this is a result of propaganda. But even beyond like just, okay, if you think about the motives, the U.S. motive makes a lot more sense than Russia denying themselves. Not only this is a critical source of revenue for them, but also critical point of leverage for them. And that's why it has always been, the U.S. has always been like, I don't know if we really like this pipeline going to Germany, because they didn't like the idea of them having this access to sort of cheap Russian gas. And so it was always a bit of a strategic iffy spot for the US. And then once you end up with this war, then they're worried that it's going to be weaponized by Russia. So anyway, the US motive always made more sense. But even beyond that, you've now had multiple reports come out saying, we didn't find any evidence of Russian sabotage. So don't you think if there was even a little bit of an indication, the U.S. media would be all over, hyping up, okay, we found X and Y and Z that could potentially point to Russia. So they haven't found any evidence of Russian sabotage. I don't know if the way that it happened, that's laid out in great detail in the HERSH piece, is exactly how it went down. But even, let's say it wasn't the U.S., let's say maybe it was Ukraine, maybe it was the UK, anyone who's on the NATO side of things, ultimately, it's the U.S. We're the ones who are running this, who are driving this train. We're the ones who have the capability. We're the ones providing the intelligence. So even if it was Ukraine, they're not doing it by themselves. We're providing the training, we're providing the resources, we're providing the intelligence gathering, etc. So that's kind of how I've always looked at it.
It's just a scary situation overall, and to get some degree of verification that it was the U.S., it's like
it's an act of war.
Can everybody kind of reel it in a little bit here? Like I'm very sympathetic to the arguments on the pro-Ukrainian side of like, look, we were invaded.
Yeah,
they were the aggressor. Therefore, by definition, almost anything we do in response to it is defensive because they invaded us. We didn't invade them. I'm actually very sympathetic to that argument. But, where it gets very murky and sketchy and questionable is when you have the United States, a giant nuclear armed superpower, now doing not just proxy war stuff, war stuff with another nuclear armed state, then all of a sudden it's like, well, then Russia can turn around in kind and be like, well, I don't want to overstate it here, but equivalent of some sort of Pearl Harbor-like attack somewhere and say, hey, you guys had it coming, you attacked our pipeline or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just opens up the door to more, like, this is the tit-for-tat escalation everybody warned about from the beginning.
Correct.
And it's a terrifying, terrifying scenario. I mean, I know it's unpopular to say at this point in time, but, like, you got to get to the negotiation table. You got to do it ASAP. You got to de-escalate this thing because the stakes are just way, 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 way too high.
Yes, and at the same time, Zelensky was just in the UK. I believe he's in France as we're recording this now. And he asked them for fighter jets, which is something that Biden still says, no, we're not going to give you F-16s. And the Brits were like, yeah, we might do that.
Oh, this is what happens. He always says no. Biden says no initially, and then like 5 months later, he quietly does the thing he said no to.
Yes.
Which is like, if you stood by the no, because again, remember, guys, the reason why he does that is to try to make a clear distinction and be clear to the Russians that, like, look, we're only providing quote unquote defensive capabilities.
We are so far beyond that.
Well, yeah, because it's been mission creep. It's been, we'll send you that, then we'll send you this, then we'll send you this. And then, so like, it's just a scary situation. And I want everybody. And by the way, we didn't even plan to talk about this issue. I just wanted to bring it up as a quick question to her.
Yes. I mean, listen, in terms of the Seymour Hersh piece, number one, for people who aren't familiar with it, this is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, especially for his reporting on the My Lai massacre. But he has had other blockbuster reporting. Some of his work has been called into question more in recent years. This particular report is based on a single anonymous source. So you should take all of that into context. But zooming out from the specifics of this piece, the U.S. motive makes a lot more sense than the Russian motive. They have not found any evidence that Russia was behind this sabotage. And the U.S. media has been very suspiciously uninterested and
Oh, that's not suspicious. I expect that.
incurious
I expect that.
about what exactly happened here. I mean, that just shows you that, to me, is another telltale indication of who was probably
Well, and also you
behind it.
call your your intelligence officer, your intelligence agent, who's your source. If you're the New York Times, hey, is this true? Bro, I don't even know what he's talking about. It's like,
Right.
hey, all right, we won't run the story. We won't comment.
White
on the
House says
I will
this
say
is
this.
complete fiction, so we'll just put their disclaimer in
I will
here.
say this: if he's wrong, which I don't think he is, but if he is wrong, then man, that's almost like you're creating a more dangerous situation by declaring it's the fault of the United States. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
then you're opening the door for Russia to do stuff and say, hey, this is in retaliation for.
Kremlin, already based on this report, has said there should be consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's reel it in.